Okay, Brian, whenever you are ready.
Okay. All right.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Brian, there's a little bit of an echo.
I see.
Brian, put yourself on mute for a second, and then Rebecca, you speak after he goes on mute.
Well, I think it sounded like it was just resolved before when you were talking, Bill.
So is it gone now?
It's gone now.
Brian, come off of mute.
And am I all right?
Talk, Rebecca.
I hope so. Yeah,
Sounds
can't hear an echo now.
it's good.
Perfect. And Emily joined right while we were trying to deal with the technical difficulty, so perfect.
Okay. In that case, I would like to officially call to order the Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. And pursuant to the extension of Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this public meeting of the Town of Bolton Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by Zoom Video Communications, Inc. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by telephone, cell phone, or personal computer using Zoom. And we do have a few guidelines for participants. Please utilize the raise hand function if you wish to address the board. You will be asked to remain on mute until you are recognized by the board, and participants are required to display their first and last names. All of that said, per tradition, we will start with a roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
Emily Winter,
Bill Payne,
Jillian Glasanos,
Rebecca Longball.
Excellent. All right, first up this evening. The Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing for under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent for 0 Butternut Lane. Rebecca, is there an update on this?
Yes, the update is the applicant's representative has requested a withdrawal without prejudice. So therefore, if the commission understands what that is, it basically means the public hearing process stops. They've withdrawn their application for no specific reason, which happens at times. So there is no further discussion necessary, and you don't need to close out the hearing because it's been withdrawn. And just to note, Brian, Lori has joined us as well.
Okay, good.
Do you want me to move on to? Well, we have the next item at 7:15. So
We
if you
do.
want, we can move on to the DCAM item.
We absolutely can.
Okay.
Are
Are
do you
you
want to
still
give an
seeing
update?
my?
Go
Sure,
ahead.
I can do that. Are you still seeing my screen with a set of plans?
Yes.
Okay. So the Dcam Project is off of 4 Bushmill Road, and they have done some of the work. They've installed the spillway, and they've also installed the culvert, which is closer to 4 Bushmill Road. I'm trying to scroll down to it. Okay. So at the culvert crossing, it was upgraded to a box culvert that meets stream crossing standards. And the ask after seeing the gravel material that was placed on top of the box culvert was that the realization that there wasn't a small berm or a small curbing on either side of just the culvert infrastructure itself. So The applicant's representative had reached out to just inquire whether or not that was appropriate. The DPW director felt comfortable with that. I also felt comfortable with it, but where it is technically a change, it's up to the commission to determine whether or not that is something that's doable under a field amendment, and therefore the applicant would incorporate that into any as-built at the end of this process once the project is complete, or any revisions more than that. Again, I feel, and the DPW director did not feel that it was any substantial change. It is not changing the function of the culvert itself, but it is rather just making sure that that material above it associated with the gravel roadway stays on the roadway and not in the resource areas.
Looking through it, I tend to agree, especially if yourself and the DPW is on board. It seems like it's a relatively minor change, and it seems like it's an improvement to the existing plans. So I don't have issue with it. Other commission members have questions, comments, or thoughts on this? Seeing none. Rebecca, could we approve this as a field amendment by a simple roll call vote? All right. In that case, I'd like to poll the commission on whether we want to accept Dcam's slight alteration as a field amendment for the plans encapsulated in DEP file number 112-0700. All those approve, please say aye, and start with Emily.
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you. So do you want me to go to the Earth? Actually, if you want to do the minutes, and then I can do the Earth Day week
Yes.
event. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. So did members have a chance to read the minutes from our March 1st, 2022 meeting? And if so, any changes, corrections, comments? And if not, does anybody need more time to read through the minutes? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for our March 1st, 2022 meeting as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for approving minutes?
A second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Earth Day is April 22nd. This year in particular, I am trying to schedule at least one event every day leading up to Earth Day. So of that week, I also know it falls on school vacation week. These range from cleanups to trail work to partnering with the library to do a reading and an event that way, along with some invasive cleanup, along with just trash cleanup as part of townwide cleanup. Sorry, people have. There is a particular group from the Worcester Dental District who are looking to volunteer on conservation land, so they're not charging anyone any fees to participate in the event. Just every year they like to volunteer around Earth Day, so they reached out to see if they were able to help with any trail work or any cleanups on conservation land, where we have, I think, plenty of work for volunteers to assist with. I don't foresee a problem with it, but that is obviously at the commission's discretion to allow for them to participate or not. This particular group would prefer a weekday in the late afternoon, which I can certainly accommodate, and that's not a problem at all. But it will most likely be I think it was the 19th or the 20th of April. But again, I'll formalize the schedule when the dates and times are finalized. But the ask this evening is, one, is the commission comfortable with doing that, having the Conservation Department host Earth Day week activities? And the second portion of that is the commission comfortable coordinating with Worcester Dental District? And the event that they would potentially participate in would not be closed to the public, so anyone could join in. It wouldn't be only that group.
I mean, I don't think I have a problem, but definitely don't have a problem with the Earth Week events. I was gonna say, as long as you can fit it into your schedule without losing your mind. You know, I do worry about that. I know you have a lot going on, but if you are able to, I think that's fantastic. As far as the Worcester Dental District group, I guess it would kind of go along the same lines. You know, are you able to oversee them, or do we have a volunteer that's able to oversee them? You know, get them going on a project. And just more out of curiosity, did they give you an idea of how many people?
They anticipated between, I think they said 10 to 20, but that's why, so when they can give me the number of people after we iron out the time and day, where I said, you know, the week of Earth Day, and they actually preferred that. And then I said the commission has to weigh in on this, obviously. So once we have this conversation tonight, and if that's fine with the commission, I would definitely limit it to 20 people max, if it's not under that, just because of my ability to be overseeing multiple people at once and making sure that everyone is practicing safe practices, I guess,
Techniques,
for
yeah.
lack of a better.
Yep.
But yes, and I do feel that I'm able to accommodate it. Like I said, I wanted to, specifically after the past 2 years where we've really been stuck at home, I think this is a really good opportunity to engage the community in something that's tied very closely with conservation. So I anticipate being busy that week, but I'm comfortable with that.
Excellent. So I have no problem with either. And any other commission members have thoughts or comments, concerns?
I'm very excited about this. When I saw Rebecca's email, I think this is great. Both really wonderful opportunities. And I think this is great. The week-long events, you know, in honor of Earth Day, Earth Week. And I think it's a great opportunity with the potential for 10 to 20 volunteers from the Worcester Dental District. There is so much work that can be done, and it is really wonderful. And hopefully it inspires people in town to get involved as well. So I am for both. Again, just as you said, Brian, as long as Rebecca is comfortable with all of this, 100% support it.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Rebecca, are you comfortable just going off our discussion, or would you like some sort of vote?
I'm comfortable going off the discussion for the Earth Day week, but I think just if ever, just, you know, a yes or no about if everyone's comfortable authorizing me to coordinate with the Worcester Dental District for that purpose.
Sure.
That would be helpful just to have in the minutes.
All right. Then in that case, we'll do a quick roll call vote. All those in favor of having Rebecca coordinate and work with the Worcester Dental District on a volunteer day on our conservation land, please say aye, starting with Emily. Oop. Sorry, Emily, aye or nay? Or
Sorry, can you hear? Yeah, aye. I'm an aye.
Okay, sorry.
My
Bill,
internet's-
Bill? Bill Payne?
Oh, aye.
Jillian Glassinos?
Aye.
And Lori Stevenson?
Aye.
And Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And I will bring us back up to Meadow Road.
Perfect. Let's check the time quick. There we
Jack Maloney, or excuse me, Ryan Proctor and Jack are on the call.
All right. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the open public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to discuss a notice of intent for Lot 5 Meadow Road. Rebecca, if I remember, we were waiting for input from DEP. Did we get input from DEP?
We did not, and I did reach out to the circuit writer, and I did leave a message for the individual who had, the environmental analyst who had commented or left the comment. And I did not hear back from either of them. I did speak with the circuit writer, and she seemed to be sending the message on, but it didn't seem like she had notes waiting. So with that being said, I do know that the applicant did submit some information specific to stormwater. They submitted the stormwater checklist that DEP had requested as well. They did acknowledge that it is 5 lots created out of 1 lot, and the need for meeting those standards and how they felt that the site currently did meet those standards. So I will hand it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Not sure where that leaves us. I was kind of hoping to get their comments to see if they had any additional information for us as to, I know the applicants had responded, what DEP thought of that response, if they thought it was adequate or appropriate. Not sure where that leaves us. I mean, I guess we would have the ability to close tonight, but it's difficult to give conditions without knowing if DEP is not happy with basically the stormwater management as proposed.
Ryan, if I can jump in.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so DEP had asked us, just as Rebecca said, for the operation and maintenance manual, as well as looking into certain stormwater devices. They had asked us specifically for roof infiltration systems, check dams in the swales, and then some settling ponds. Subsequent to receiving those comments, we provided all 3 of those items in addition to documenting that and sending that to them. So we're not quite sure that we should be expecting another response to their initial comment, just because we provided essentially exactly what they've been asking for by way of those stormwater structures. So that's why we came back here tonight to at the very least present what we have updated the plans with and discuss with the commission if it's adequate in your eyes at the very least. So that's where we stand at this point. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
You know, it's believable. I did see that, you know, you did include the things that DEP was asking to be included. Rebecca, is it not uncommon that sometimes DEP won't necessarily comment back if
Actually,
they feel it's,
yeah, it's very common.
Yep.
And actually I think the past year we've had more interaction through comments with DEP than we've had in the past. Normally it's they issue a comment with the issuance of the DEP file number, and then the commission reiterates that, receives the information, and then it's a closeout. But the past year there has been either a re-request for information, or it's been something like this where it's noted afterwards that it actually triggered something else. But like to Ryan's point, it doesn't necessarily open a dialogue between DEP and the commission. It's just noting that this is required, this is necessary, and to incorporate that. And to Ryan's point, where they have already included the items that were requested of them, I wouldn't anticipate DEP having comments back, but I think it was reasonable for the commission to reach out to DEP as we have and say, do you have any additional comments? Does this meet your ask? But again, to Ryan's point, it seems to where they've provided that what was asked of them versus leaving something open-ended.
It makes sense. All right.
Did you want the applicant to go through any summary or anything more of what was submitted and what they revised on the plans?
I
No,
would-
Or are you comfortable?
I mean, I'll ask the commission as well that question, but the one real question I had was with basically the flood storage at the bottom of the hill. It seems like on the properties next door, whatever was designed isn't working properly. I know there's been issues with it. And one thing I would possibly say if we were to condition this, how we were to condition this is I think I'd want to see some of those devices up by the road front in place before the major excavation up the hill starts, if that makes sense, Ryan.
It does, yep.
Okay. And Rebecca, I know we can kind of write that in as far as the construction schedule goes and what needs to go first. So with what's been proposed, I think I would be comfortable closing tonight, but maybe voting in 2 weeks, just so we can write that wording in. That's one of the conditions I think we would want to put in, just to get that written on this proposal, and just vote on it cleanly next time. That's kind of where I'm leaning. Other commission members have questions, comments, concerns about Lot 5 and how it's in its current state. It's the current plans we have for it.
I wouldn't mind if Ryan could go through just kind of the updates based on the DEP comments. And then to your point, Brian, the issues that were happening on the adjacent lots, I'd kind of like to understand what caused that and how we're preventing it here. And if it's a matter of the flood storage was not constructed pre-construction, then yes, I'd like to condition that. But I wasn't exactly clear on what the specific issue was on the adjacent property. So if we could just have that conversation just to make sure that we don't repeat that here, that would be really helpful.
Sure. So Ryan, if you're able to go through the changes that were made to get us up to date with stormwater first, and then we can tackle the second part of that second, as far as what's going on next door and how we can prevent that on this property and the one we'll open next.
Certainly. Am I showing this? Can you see the site plan right now? Okay. I'll start presenting. I do have to be in Stowe at 7:30. I have another meeting, so that's why Jack's here to take over in case I have to go. So
Okay.
I don't want to leave mid-speech on you. So, pursuant to DEP's comments specifically, they had asked us for, as I said before, the 3 items were roof infiltration systems. We've added 2 dry wells consisting of Caltech chambers, and we've detailed those on the plans as well. So we have one on the downhill side of the house and one on the uphill. Those have been sized to accommodate any stormwater flow associated with the proposed roof, and they're actually oversized. So the applicant decides to shift the foundation, build a slightly bigger house or something, they are oversized to accommodate an increase in stormwater flow. In addition to those, we've added, and this came up at the last meeting through talks with the commission as well, we've added the stone check dams in the grass swales on both sides of the driveway. I've spaced them every 5 vertical feet, and that'll just help to slow runoff, prevent erosion, and per talks at the meeting, we had kept them as riprap to be a little bit more natural than, say, a concrete structure or something of that sort. And then lastly, on lot 5, the only other addition we did for the plans, we've added plantings adjacent to the driveway in the area inside the 100-foot buffer zone. And that was not one of DEP's comments, that was something that had come up when we were before you guys a couple weeks ago. So we have a couple of low shrubs and then a couple of small canopy trees. I did call out species, but I did add a note that any changes to those species would have to be approved by you. So just so the applicant doesn't come in and install something that is off court of what we're intending here. So
What are
those
the-
were, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What
Oh,
were
that's
the
okay.
proposed species, Ryan?
So I had dogwoods, cherry tree, and then some honeysuckle to be a little more lower brush. Sorry, I can zoom in.
Yep, I was gonna say, I think we lost Ryan, but,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still here.
oh, okay. Wasn't sure if you had to go. Any other questions about those changes, Emily, or other commission members? All right.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to see the species. Thank you
Yeah,
for
sure.
zooming in on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that definitely clarifies the updates and changes that were made. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And as to the second part, can you speak to what was happening on the lots next door, which have a similar topography coming down to the road? And how we can possibly not have that happen on this lot?
I can a little bit. I've been by the site once and I've spoken with the contractor a little bit. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it comes down to timing. So I think they disturbed the site, ground froze, and they stopped construction. And then the ground started thawing, and that's why they've had a lot of runoff.
We've also had some significant rainstorms,
Yeah.
you know, over the winter and even late last fall when they initially opened up that driveway, Brian.
And those basins were not constructed at the foot of the driveway before
Correct.
they opened that site up. So even with, you can talk about the high velocity storm, high volume storms, frequent storms, etc. But it wasn't phased in a way that would have even accommodated some of that. So I think, Brian, you're correct to say if and when the commission is working on conditions, it would be very mindful to ensure that we're phasing some of these stormwater infrastructure pieces before we get to the back and we're clearing something wide open.
Can you show where the basins will be for these for lot 5 and 6?
For this, it's going to be on lot 6, I think,
Yes, so I
down
can
by
open that.
Meadow Road.
I was gonna say, Rebecca, if you want to pull that up quick, let me officially open that one too.
Okay,
That's right.
Ryan just pulled it up.
I should be able to have both open at the same time, and that'll just make our lives easier.
Yep, you just
so
need to
the-
close them separately.
Yes, yeah. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to discuss a notice of intent for Lot 6 Meadow Road.
So
So, and-
Bill, those areas right before Meadow Road, so it's outside of the public right of way.
Okay, and they weren't constructed in the one that was flooding and causing icing on Meadow Road?
Correct. It was the similar layout in terms of the basins at the bottom of the driveway, and then it wove up through the slope, and then there was a cleared area at the top of where the single family house is going to be built. And it was cleared, the driveway was cut in, and the basins were not constructed, excuse me. And that was moved at the time outside, or mostly outside of the jurisdiction of the commission. So
Okay.
that is where we are.
Can we go back to the plantings? I'm sorry, I was just catching up on that. I don't think the cornelian cherry is a native species.
Okay.
And I think we had talked about native species we always like to see native species, but specifically in the resource areas. So I don't know if we can just request that there's a native alternate used, or if there's something that we want to specify.
Yeah, if you have a suggestion, we're happy to include that in the plan. That's not a heavy lift on our end.
Are you looking for a shrub or a tree? Because there are native cherry trees.
I would ask what you would like to see, because we can propose anything on the plan and have the contractor install it pretty much. So
So it looks like the emblem of a tree, if I'm matching the symbols properly with. Because the other looks like a shrub or a bush.
it was intended to be a tree.
So there's a native black cherry, right?
Yeah, I guess we probably wouldn't want to pick out the exact tree, but
Right.
more just kind of put it back to you if you could pick a
species.
native tree
Okay.
to the area and switch it to that. I think that would mitigate that.
That cornelian cherry is native to Southeast Asia and Europe. So we want to see something that's native to Northeast.
Southeast Bolton, yeah.
Understood. I apologize. I do have to run, but I appreciate your time tonight. I'm going to stop screen sharing here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So to follow up with that, I mean, we'd be happy to put anything in there that the commission would want. If that's something that we can do as an addendum for the next meeting, that would be fine. In regards to the phasing for the construction for the basins down at the entranceway, I mean, that's pretty standard, I would think, in any sort of scenario. I mean, the last roadway that I was part of, I guess, was off of 85 over there, and I think they did the same thing. You get your drainage structures in first, and then start constructing from there. So I don't think that's going to be an issue, especially after what happened with Lot 4. So the contractor and the builder for this lot will have to understand that that's the way it goes, and that's the way it should be done anyway. So.
All right. Additional questions from members of the commission? None.
Are there any plantings on Lot 6, Brian?
Can we pull up the lot?
I'm
6
sorry.
one? No, you're fine.
I don't have a printout of the plans, which I usually have.
It's all right.
I can't remember if we requested anything. No, it was Lot 5 specifically.
Just Lot 5.
I
Yeah.
think
That
on
was where the
lot 6,
driveway is, the
Emily,
buffer.
Yeah,
I think on lot 6, you had highlighted, if you can see my mouse, this area here that edges into, that's only grading. There's no permanent structures within the adjacent upland resource area, and that area was going to be seeded with a native vegetative mix or with native plantings. I think that's what we were talking about, areas that are disturbed and jurisdictional, that they would be restored with the native plantings, whether that be a seed mix and shrub and tree or just seed mix.
now if it's a seed mix, I'd just be concerned the homeowner would end up mowing it anyway, because it's right at the front of the house. I don't know if we were going to do that, how we would enforce that, I guess, for the future homeowner.
Yep, the commission has the ability to condition to do, I know in the past on other subdivisions, you've done either a planting plan there, or you've done a specific row of vegetation that helps delineate. I mean, it's a structured row of either shrubs or trees, and then seed beyond it. And that deters the residents from mowing and encroaching with their lawn.
I'm thinking, just thinking out loud, maybe some plantings there in lieu of the wildlife mix might be more realistic for future homeowner.
It's what the commission wants to request. I was just stating, I believe that I could read through the minutes, but I believe last time it was brought up about the native plantings,
Yeah.
and typically it's native plantings and seed mix. That's all. But if the commission would prefer one method over the other, that's something the commission's able to condition.
Anybody have strong feelings either way with a native planting versus the native seed mix? Also trying to look. This is not seeing any. Emily, which one would you feel more comfortable with?
I mean, I think either is a great option. I'm just thinking that because that's in pretty close proximity to the house, it's the front yard, if you will. That area will be cleared of trees. I'm just thinking if it were a wildlife mix, that it may end up getting mowed. Whereas if we were to just ask for some shrubs, it would kind of delineate that area. I don't feel strongly one way or the other particularly, but that's kind of where my mind is going, is what has longevity as a delineation with future homeowners.
We can do some plantings in there. I guess the only concern is, will one take over the other if we do the wildlife mix? Would that eventually take over the plantings in that area? Or if there are more plantings than the wildlife mix, what's that? The longevity in regards to having deer come in there and eating everything, so we're kind of stuck in between, I think. I do agree that there should be something there, and to what it is, I think maybe the plantings to start with and see what that looks like, and leave the wildlife mix out of it. My thought is that it just may take over and just become a whole big bed of weeds or whatnot versus anything else. And I kind of agree with Emily that if it does become, weeds or whatnot, or it looks like weeds, that the homeowner's more entailed to mow it than maintain it. So I think plantings, we can put some plantings together for the next hearing. As part of again, an addendum. If you want to close the hearing tonight, Brian, that's fine, but we can definitely add that in, especially if you're not going to vote on anything tonight.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if we have a chance to write in the conditions about phasing the construction, we can probably kind of write that in conditionally as well, and or
Okay.
accept the addendum.
Yep.
If that makes.
Well, go ahead. On the plantings, I would actually, when you are thinking about whatever things, I would highly suggest anything that is deer resistant. We have a lot of deer down this end of town, and
I know, that's why I said it, Lori. I understand. So it's crazy.
We love them,
that whole
but
section of the neighborhood up there.
yeah, they live in that whole area up there. So just something to be thinking about while you're picking out your plants.
Yep. Thank you.
Native understory, because we do have, this is all forested, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So something, it's right on the edge of the wooded area. So some kind of understory, native plantings. Might even be able to do something, that's kind of a wooded, like an evergreen shrub of some sort. Might be more deer resistant and kind of bring that wood line back into play a little bit, or tie in with the wood line.
Yeah, if you go right up Meadow Road and you look at any of your neighbors' yards, there's, lawn is limited because it's a beautiful road. It's, a lot of trees. So anything that's going to survive without the deer eating them would be better.
Yep. No, I agree.
Right. Other questions, comments from commission members? Rebecca, do you have additional thoughts?
I do.
Please.
I see the limit of work, which is the proposed erosion control barrier on the side of the home. But I was curious what the limit of clearing is going to be. And from my understanding, looking at these plans here, there will be no clearing inside of the adjacent upland resource area in this area, just behind that single family home on lot 6. So I just, one, I think should bring that to the attention of the commission and just have that confirmed. Second, any drainage going down the driveway should be directed to the right-hand side of the driveway. I see there's a drainage trench there, so I believe that's the case, and that's what the contours look like they're doing. But my concern would be drainage going into this vernal pool habitat area.
I believe, if I can interrupt, I believe part of the revised plans show drainage trench with check dams on both sides of the driveway.
Yeah.
So that would be mirrored. This plan is an older plan. I know Ryan had that up originally, but the revised plans show that trench on both sides.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then
Plus-
on lot, sorry, go ahead.
If you just snap back a minute. If you look at, there's actually a cut there and everything is directed down the driveway. So there's a berm like between the well and the edge of the driveway. There's about a 1.5 to 2 foot grade change. So it's not like it's going to be heading right down to the vernal pool. It's going to be stuck right in that driveway and caught in those trenches.
Thank you. And then on lot 5, as always, the concern, according to the commission's jurisdiction and the associated regulations, is permanent alteration to the adjacent upland resource area, and whether or not the commission is able to, or whether or not the applicant is able to fully mitigate that permanent impact. And I did note the plantings, and I know this is an older plan, and showing the plantings that are being proposed, I think those were more, I don't know that those were mitigation or that they were just to memorialize the fact that that's adjacent upland resource area. But I was unsure if the commission, just again, bringing that to the commission's attention again, that we do have the driveway within the adjacent upland resource area and the mitigation necessary to accommodate that. Is it appropriate, or is there something else that the applicant should be doing to allow for it?
Yeah, it's a good question, Rebecca. I'm not sure what the right answer is. It's hard for me to find an area of mitigation basically where everything has been proposed. And I don't know if the driveway coming in a different way seemed like it was a bad idea for the general health of that whole area, just how everything is set and where it comes in and how the hill kind of flows down. I'm not sure if other commission members have thoughts on this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you remember that site walk that we had, Brian, where Rebecca, yourself, Bill, and Ryan and myself were out there. I mean, this would be the optimal place to go with that driveway. I mean, we kind of skirted around the bottom between the vernal pool and the wetland area down below in the resource area. And this is, a smaller area compared to what it could have been for impacts. So, and again, it looks worse on paper. I think if you remember our conversation when we walked up that center line, it actually looks a little flatter, so to speak, in the field than it actually does on paper. So it's not as drastic looking in the field, you know, from where that house was all the way down past to where the septic system is. It's I'm not going to say it's fairly flat, but you know, there is a pitch to it, but not, it seems worse on paper, as I guess what I'm saying.
Rebecca, did you have any thoughts on if you mentioned further mitigation?
I don't necessarily. What I'm thinking of is, having reviewed our bylaw and regulations multiple times, as I do before every meeting, it's at the commission discretion to determine whether or not there's sufficient mitigation for alterations to the adjacent upland resource area. I do agree that if permitted, this is a good location regarding the grades on site, but that's not what the question is that the commission has to answer. The commission has to be able to establish that the driveway being there does not alter the adjacent upland resource area permanently, and if in fact it does, how is that impact being mitigated? So is there an ability to have a mitigation planting? Is there, I know we've already talked about some of the stormwater requirements, which are lower impact, which is beneficial, but is there additional areas that could give back that performance standard to the adjacent upland resource area if the commission felt it was losing that? So that's all. I'm just bringing that to light because now you have a permanent driveway being proposed there that's increasing impervious material within the adjacent upland resource area that currently has nothing. But I'm not saying that it should not go there. I'm just, again, referring back to the regulations and what the commission has to review it under.
Right. And I think last time some of the plantings inside the resource area were proposed as somewhat mitigation and also protecting that area or from further basically expansion of yard or anything. And again, I just didn't see other mitigation areas. So much of the area is naturalized already. I didn't see an area for further mitigation, but any commission members have strong thoughts, feelings, or an idea on different ways to mitigate? Because I think it does make a permanent change within the resource area. If we're talking about that, and I don't know if the plantings as proposed are significant mitigation, but I also agree with, as Jack was saying, when we looked at it out in the field, it did seem the most logical place and the least damaging place to actually put a driveway for this lot. So I don't have anything further to propose on that, but other commission members have any comments or ideas on further mitigation, or think it doesn't meet performance standards or does? Okay. Not seeing any additional, so I guess I would say the plantings as they're proposed is something we would go with.
And the check dams, Brian, that were added
Yes.
in.
Yeah.
So this is an old plan, but yes, those stormwater components that Ryan had just reviewed with us before he jumped on the other call are definitely incorporated as part of this project.
All right. So, I should ask, are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on Lot 5 or Lot 6 Meadow Road? Raise their hand.
Again, you can use your raise hand function or put a message in the chat.
I'm
I'm
not
not
seeing
seeing anyone.
Okay. All right, then I'll ask, would commission members be comfortable if we close these hearings tonight and voted on it next meeting, basically just to give Rebecca a chance to officially write up kind of that construction schedule and or any other conditions we might have had. All right. If everybody's fine with that, I'd like to make a motion that we officially close the public hearing for lot 5 Meadow Road. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. And then I'd like to make a motion that we close the hearing for lot 6 Meadow Road. Do I hear a second for closing lot 6?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Rebecca, when's that next hearing?
The next hearing is April 5th.
7:15 again?
So these will not have times associated with them because the
Okay.
public hearing has been closed. But I do post the agendas the Thursday afternoon, Thursday prior to the meeting. And I can certainly email you that agenda as well.
Great, thank you. Everybody have a great night.
All right, thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
All right. Time. All right. Excuse me. All right, next up this evening, we need to deliberate the findings and hopefully vote on Century Mill Road, map 3.D, parcel 75. I'll ask the commission members get copies of the draft findings. Yeah, and we were also sent, the applicant wanted to make comments on the draft findings, just kind of post their side of it, and we're able to send those along. Did everybody have a chance to, well, did everybody get the applicant's comments on the draft findings and have a chance to read through those? Okay. Let me grab my copies. All right. Rebecca, I'm not sure the best way to do this. I think going through each additional finding as it was drafted, and then I'll ask if basically if commission members have comments, thoughts, changes, questions on any of the draft findings lines. I might not read them all out. I don't know if I need to read the full or if I can just reference the actual number.
If you reference the number, that would be sufficient so that I can then relay it back to the draft document. And then ultimately at the end, after going through the findings, the commission will need to vote on a decision, both
Yes.
for the Wetlands Protection Act and under the local wetland bylaw.
Do you have the draft findings on your screen? Or
I can get them. Would you like me to display them?
if possible?
Okay, I can do that. Is this the right document?
Proposed project is encompassed. Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
Um,
Yep.
And I will be going through at the same time and making some of the edits at least. So that's what I'm doing if you see this change.
Okay, so when it comes to the findings as drafted, finding one, starting at the proposed project, did anybody have any questions, comments, or changes on that? And we can always back up because I might move faster on some. Finding number 2, starting with well, septic, and shed. Any questions, comments, or changes with that? And again, I see none. All right. On question 3, and this one I will read, is the Bolton Conservation Commission, hereinafter referred to as the commission, finds that the applicant has expressed that the work in the buffer zone and resource areas defined under the local wetland bylaw and Wetland Protection Act and cannot be avoided if they are to achieve their project purpose. The alternatives that the applicant has considered within the constraints of the lot layout are not feasible and will or will not impact the resource areas referenced above.
And one edit on that
Go ahead, please.
is this is supposed to say within the constraints of the layout are or are not. So that's another one we need to.
Right.
And then the will and will not.
All right. Having read through it, commission members have thoughts as to which way we should go on those, basically the highlighted areas. Thank you for highlighting some of those, Rebecca. That comes in handy.
Trying.
All right. Be avoided.
I have a question about this. When we say achieve their project purpose, so we have talked over the past year and a half or so and said, could you put one house on this lot? So where it says achieve their project purpose, does that mean that they have shown that these impacts cannot be avoided with the 3 lots, or just in general? I'm just trying to understand what this item means specifically.
Sure. Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please, Rebecca. Yeah.
Where it says to achieve their project purpose, their project purpose is the description that was given with the application, which is to construct the 3 single-family homes with the associated necessary infrastructure for the driveway, wells, and septics. So right now, the commission does not have a revised set of plans that shows one single-family home, and the applicant has made it very clear that that is not their project purpose or goal.
Okay. So specific to the proposed 3-lot layout.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and it again, I run into the same thing that Emily is. It's a difficult one that because we didn't really have any alternatives proposed. But I guess seeing how we didn't have any alternatives proposed, that it's almost like it's as if they are not feasible and will impact the resource areas referenced above, is kind of where I would go with that one. Other commission members have thoughts on that or a different opinion?
I think that's how I was reading it, Brian, because there are no alternatives proposed.
Agreed.
I would agree too.
All right, so Rebecca, I think we're gonna go with for number 3, that they are not feasible and will impact the resource areas referenced above.
To note as well, the commission does have and will not impact, is that what you said?
And will.
And will, okay. The commission does have the ability to rephrase any of these items
Yes.
also. This is a draft document. This is not meant to dictate what's said, but just rather trying to put something in an organized format so that we can go through it in a relatively efficient manner this evening.
That is a really good point.
Yeah.
All right. That said, getting to finding number 4. Questions, comments, changes to finding number 4. And that's basically natural heritage. Lets us know. And yeah. All right. Finding 5. And this one I can read again. The commission finds that the overall drainage patterns on site either will or will not be maintained or improved as proposed. There are 2 depressional areas of infiltration. These areas provide a low point to remediate floodwaters. The large pines along the driveway and throughout the property assist in maintaining the drainage patterns by taking in and up through their capillary action about 100 gallons of water per day as they photosynthesize throughout the year, therefore assisting in the maintenance and improving water levels on site, specifically during times the floodplain is utilized toward its maximum capacity and it becomes necessary for the area to recover from high precipitation events. Additionally, large diameter red maple intercepts 2,766.75 gallons per year, and a large diameter white pines intercept approximately 2,690.11 gallons per year. Utilizing the infiltration provided by the applicant submitted into iTree, utilizing the species DBH only within the driveway area, intercepts over 37,400 gallons on an annual basis, thus offsetting stormwater on site before it ever becomes runoff. This was run again in iTree, including trees beyond the driveway's limit of work, and incorporated the other jurisdictional areas, resulting in over 60,000 gallons per year of rainfall intercepted before ever becoming runoff. Commission members have strong thoughts, feelings on how this was worded, or basically if you think it will be maintained or will not be maintained as proposed. Excuse me.
Brian, one thing
Yeah.
to note as well, that we did receive the stormwater calculations for this. So although this was more to highlight the adjacent upland resource area performance standards and the value that currently is provided versus contesting stormwater calculations run through HydroCAD.
Gotcha. Let's see. I mean, I don't think the drainage patterns will be improved. The question remains, will they be maintained? From everything I've seen, from what I've read, it does not seem to me that it will be maintained or improved. I think it's just filling and covering a lot of land that's currently being used for drainage, acting as floodplain, and just force them to take out a lot of trees, a lot of mature trees in that floodplain, which again is not common for us here in town to have forested floodplain like that. And it's difficult with everything, again, all the computer models we read and different ideas on different computer models. I just don't, I just personally, I think the drainage patterns will not be maintained or improved. Other commission members have thoughts on that one?
I find this one very challenging, Brian, for the same reasons you stated. As you said, we received stormwater calcs. There was a peer review. There were, calculations run through iTree. But my gut and my common sense tells me that I do not feel that the drainage patterns will be maintained or improved. Even though we have these computer programs saying it's all good. In addition to that, we are seeing heavier rainfalls, and computer programs are being updated currently to accommodate that. And that was not, I do not believe that the updated rainfalls were taken into account with this. So those kind of things really concern me, you know, as we see more and more water through climate change. So I find this one to be really challenging. You know, we have the data, but when we go out on the site and we see how wet the site is, it doesn't really seem to add up.
Tend to agree. Other commission members have thoughts?
I think that's my biggest problem too, Brian. I think some of the models and some of the models are simplistic models. They don't take the full account of what's happening there into account in the modeling. And what we see on site, especially what I see on site every time I've been there with the two depressional areas, contain water every time I've been there, and they contain water which is upwards of 1,000 square feet every time. And if they run that in the models, they say the models, it doesn't exist. So what we see and what the models are predicting, I don't believe in. And as an engineer, I can't back up a model that I know is not showing me something that's accurate.
Unless I hear otherwise from commission members, Rebecca, I think it would be that our findings is that it will not maintain nor improve as proposed drainage patterns on site.
Any rephrasing of this? I know there are other sections that touch upon this as well, but at this time, let me know. Again, commission members, just speak out if that needs to be revised in any way as we go through this.
I have no revisions for 5 at this time, but all right. Moving on to 6. So the finding is that there either is or is not feasible space to implement and create full mitigation on site when alternatives are unavoidable within the protection resource areas under the local bylaw, chapter 233, as required under chapter 223, jurisdiction section 2, to prevent the loss of a resource area. I mean, this one for me, it's not feasible. I remember looking for all sorts of ways to try to mitigate what was being lost, and everything else is functioning resource area. I mean, there was no real place to put it. It seemed like we were digging up stuff that functioned as floodplain to call it floodplain. I mean, it was one of those, again, it was on a map somewhere saying this isn't technically floodplain, so we're going to dig this up and call it floodplain, even though I know it's functioning as floodplain. I've seen it functioning as floodplain on multiple occasions. So for me, this one's easy. It's not feasible to implement and create full mitigation at all. But I'd like to hear from other commission members. Anybody have thoughts or feelings on this one? Seeing no objections, Rebecca, I think we would go with that. There is not feasible space to implement and create full mitigation on site. All right. 7. So the project is not or is feasible, as it has not proven that there will be no net loss of functions as required under the bylaw regulations, section 1.02, section 2, paragraph 1. This project and is or is not an exempt project under the bylaw or nor the Wetlands Protection Act. I don't know, do commission members have strong thoughts on how to word finding 7? And
Well, it's
again,
definitely, it's not an exempt project. We know that.
Yeah.
Right. We have resource areas on site. That one's a slam dunk right there. And we just talked about, I feel like this kind of relates back to the stormwater calcs and the actual functionality of the site. Real life observations that have been made. So we can say that the stormwater calcs prove it out, but when you're on site, we're seeing otherwise. So I don't, the calcs are showing that there will be no net loss. This goes back to the challenge that we have with this computer programming and versus, actual real life, observations and conditions. So I feel like this kind of ties into previous item.
I tend to agree, trying to stay consistent with what we had in findings before. It seems to me that it's not feasible because we haven't proven that there will be no net loss to function. It seemed like we were all saying we thought there would be a net loss to function in earlier findings. And I think I would keep this the same, that it's not feasible in that it's not been proven that there'll be no net loss to function.
Now, is that okay to do when we have calcs and peer review? So just getting into technicalities, is it okay to state that it has not proven when it has technically been proven through calculations and peer reviews?
So we have a section in our bylaw and the regulations that talks about how to determine. I was just pulling that up. Bear with me one moment.
Sure.
How to determine and define these various resource areas. And it says the elevation that is reached by the amount of water from a 100-year storm event determined either by visual observation or by calculation using the soil service hydrologic model, which the modeling is what they used. And that's what we read in the conclusion of our peer review, that they had agreed with the calculation results, but also understood that the images that were provided and the statements made of what was observed on site, there's a component that does note that that is a way to determine that. So I would support the commission either way. I think where the difference is, and this is only talking about the bylaw,
Right.
this portion of that. So maybe that's I would, if the commission's comfortable with that amendment, I would actually put that second component about it not being exempt, because the commission has stated it's not exempt under the wetland bylaw nor the Wetlands Protection Act. But this is only referring to the bylaw, because the Wetlands Protection Act does not state visual observation. Does that make sense?
It does to me. And I think it's nice to split them like that, because then I think it not so much makes it easy, but so for finding 7, I would say it's not feasible because again, the bylaw allows for that observational data. Any commission members, different thoughts? All right. So then I guess it would be a discussion of 8 then, the new 8, basically. That the project's not exempt under the the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, nor should it be exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. Right, and everybody's comfortable with that new 8, and that makes sense. Okay. All right, which brings us to 9, which was 8 in the original draft, which states the commission has determined that this project either will or will not impact the interests identified under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 233, and associated regulations. This determination is based on site characteristics and proposed project details. The performance standards of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act shall be adhered to. The following special conditions the applicant are fully incorporated as part of DEP file number. It's 112-00.
693.
Thank you.
Brian, for this
Go ahead.
one, if the commission wants, since this is determine this project will not, this may be something that the commission wants to go through the other draft findings and then come back to. Or if the commission's comfortable with it, that's also something we'd be able to separate out if the commission was feeling strongly one way towards the Wetlands Protection Act versus the bylaw, or vice versa, or if they're comfortable leaving it together. But just again, to note, amendments can be made at this time. And
Right.
make them if they need to be made.
I mean, I think it will definitely impact the interest identified under both Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw.
Yeah, that would be, it would make sense because it's jurisdictional under both, but then
Right.
the follow-up would be, can you condition it to meet necessary performance standards? Which is not incorporated as part of this.
I see what you're saying. Hmm. I mean, as 9 is written right now, I would think it would simply be will that it will impact the interest identified. I mean, I can see breaking it out, but I could see just leaving it together for what that's actually stating. Other commission members have strong thoughts, feelings. All right, in that case, Rebecca, I'd keep that and change it to that it will impact. All right. So, yep, 10.
This 10
Go ahead.
is solely about imposing security for construction or alterations so that there can be surety that it is going to be conducted in the appropriate time frame and completed. And then if it's done and completed, just like other funds that are held, the funds get returned to them upon substantial completion and final certificate of compliance being issued.
Which I remember from my days of old in the commission. I bet Lori Stevenson remembers escrow and calculating escrow for these type of projects as well. I don't have a problem with 10 as it's written. Any commission members want changes, thoughts, comments on 10, finding 10? All right, seeing none, Rebecca, I think we can move on to section 10 regarding the adjacent upland resource areas. All right. Rebecca, do we have the total square footage
We
Sorry.
do, and I apologize, I did not put that in, but that will come directly from the plans and the
Yeah.
documents that the applicant has most recently submitted, which is referenced above in this document itself as well.
Right. I mean, I think they've demonstrated that the work in the aura can't be avoided in order for them to achieve their project purpose. Again, that's me. As far as, the second half of that question, sorry, the project purpose, and as mitigation has or has not proposed to restore all auras, and the commission finds that after the aura is satisfactorily restored, the aura will or will not again function to protect the wetland interests. I don't know how to come down that one. I mean, there is some restoration work. Again, I don't think we can mitigate all the changes that are being made in the aura. There's just not enough room there to actually propose mitigation for all the changes that are being proposed within the auras. And if it's satisfactorily, yeah. The last part of that question is always difficult for me, because if it is satisfactorily restored, then it will again function to protect the wetland interests. But I don't know that I would almost like mitigation. I almost feel it's mitigation has not been proposed to restore all the auras. But if it was, if after the aura is satisfactorily restored, that it will again function. I'm just.
So is that something that needs to be reworded then? Again, any of this can be revised by the commission at this time.
Right. I mean, as far as the first part, I think they've demonstrated that the work in the aura can't be avoided in order to achieve their project purpose. Does anyone disagree with that or have a different thought on that? All right. And then, mitigation, I would say, has not been proposed to restore all auras. Though according to the plans, they did propose mitigation to show what the aura would look like afterwards. So I guess I'm struggling with this. Maybe mitigation has been proposed. Wow. I don't know. Other commission members have strong thoughts or any idea on the wording of Part B to Section 10?
The way that it's written, Brian, to restore all. So no, not all, right?
Right.
So then it would be has not. You said some, but not all.
I would tend to agree with that. Anyone have a different thought? All right, so I think for Section B, Rebecca, that mitigation has not been proposed to restore all auras. And then Part C, I guess.
Reword that. So maybe if you take out, if it's the commission finds that the aura, that after the aura will
Or will not. Well,
the aura will or will not be satisfactorily
well, I think it's
restored.
the commission finds that proposed mitigation will not satisfactorily restore the aura.
and then get rid of this last part?
Yes.
Other commission members, okay?
And then I think you want to get rid of B before satisfactorily, or will not satisfactorily restore.
And in item B above, mitigation has not been proposed to restore all auras, then, right? Proposed.
Was that saying the same thing now?
I was just reading through that and I was like, maybe it kind of does. I think you can actually get rid of B and just leave C.
Okay.
This mitigation was proposed, but that we find the proposed mitigation within the aura is not satisfactory, will not satisfactorily restore the aura. I don't know why I can't say that word.
And make that a B, Rebecca, also.
Aha, good catch. Okay. We're comfortable. And then I'll put that number. That's not something that the commission's establishing. That's something that's from the document that's already been submitted.
Okay. When it comes to section 11, A on section 11. Any questions, comments, changes to that? And again, that's from Natural Heritage. Usually they give us that report pretty cut and dry. B under section 11. Changes, questions, comments on that. Okay. Hearing none. C under section 11. Changes, questions, or comments on C.
Are we okay identifying these as isolated land subject to flooding based on our peer review findings? Is that?
So this is the full title of
Okay,
the resource area under the bylaw, just
got it.
to know.
Okay.
All right. So D under 11, that the commission finds that the wildlife habitat associated with the riverfront areas on this project will or will not be negatively impacted. And again, I'm curious how the commission would want to go with that. I mean, if we're finding that it's going to impact, the project's going to impact the functioning of the wetlands. Well, I guess this technically just says to the riverfront areas. Habitat associated with riverfront areas. Front areas.
It's specifically be at the southern part of the site, just within the
Yes.
riverfront.
Yeah.
Yes, just the riverfront area. So if you recall the riverfront area on this particular site, it was the area just before the existing single family home and then by the entrance of the driveway.
I think with what we've seen and heard, I'd be tempted to say that it would not be negatively impacted. Again, it's a small area that most of the plans avoid. It's just a question of everything else happening on the site. Will it affect this? I could see saying will not be negatively impacted here, just because, again, how the plans are laid out, where the actual riverfront areas are. But I'd be happy to hear if other commission members have different thoughts, changes, feelings.
I'm going to agree with you on that. And unfortunately, as we know, impacts are never isolated.
I know.
So the impacts to the site, of course, are going to impact these areas down the line. But if we're specifically supposed to be honing in on just the riverfront area, there aren't, I would say will not, if we're just isolating it to that very specific area. In reality, you know, we have to look at the whole site, but for this, I would say will not, Brian.
Okay. Other commission members have thoughts on that either way? All right, Rebecca, I'd say we leave that as will not, or change that to will not. All right, which brings us to section 12, stormwater management. All right. So 12A is the commission finds that the overall drainage patterns on site either will or will not be maintained if the work is completed in compliance with the approved plans and this order of conditions. I was gonna say, it's a difficult one because we technically haven't issued an order of conditions yet. Or voted to or not to issue an order of conditions.
We can come back to this, Brian, as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think, compliant with the approved plans in this order. Say if we were to approve an order of conditions, I would think that the patterns would be maintained because that would be one of the things we were looking to do within the order of conditions, but
so that's accurate as well, Brian. That's
okay. Others have thoughts on that? Does that make sense? That if we were to issue an order of conditions, in theory, we're going to issue an order of conditions in a way that basically maintains the drainage patterns, or do our best to maintain the drainage patterns on site. Okay. All drainage patterns on site. Yeah, I would.
Yeah, because then that's referencing with any conditions if the commission chooses to issue an order. So at this time, the commission's not making that decision yet.
Correct. But if we did, I would say it would be a will. All right. B in other words. Looking at B on this, 12B, and I know, sorry, I'm just flipping through my notes. I know the applicants had, this is one of the sections the applicants had comments on. I just wanted to refamiliarize myself. Do others have thoughts right now on 12B?
I think my concern before was that we were identifying these as isolated land subject to flooding. But as Rebecca explained, there is a bylaw that is isolated land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or stormwater. And although these were verified to not be isolated land subject to flooding through peer reviews, we have seen standing water, and that has been a concern since day one within the commission. Where is that water going? We're seeing one of those depressions almost completely filled in for a home. And I think that's been the basis for our concern for this entire time. So I think that we can say that we do not believe that these depressions should ever have been filled because they do hold groundwater, especially after storms. So I think that that statement is accurate, and I do not think that we are calling them out as isolated land subject to flooding. So I don't think that that is a false or incorrect statement in any way.
I tend to agree. I think I'm fine with it as is written. Other commission members have thoughts on this?
Brian, I think it was back in November of 2020, there was a storm where there was actually pictures taken where those two depressions had substantial water in them, something close to 1,000 square feet. And again, I was there one other time where I was able to pace it off, and the depressions also had water in it that seemed to be quite large, though they weren't, my measurements were steps, not accurate measurements. I've seen a couple times where those depressions were holding water,
Same here on my time
considerable water.
on site. Yeah, so I'm fine with B as it's drafted. Anyone else have disagree with that or want to change any wording to B? All right, moving on to C. And this is another one where I know the applicant had given comment as well. Yeah, and Rebecca, this is what I'd ask you. I know they were questioning if we could legally ask for them to get a review from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And I'm just not sure what the law would say with that, if that makes sense.
This was meant to be more of a reminder, so I do agree that the commission is unable to require, so that's why I just took out the word must.
Yeah.
The commission finds that the applicant shall seek determination. The applicant of yeah, so
The applicant should obtain or must obtain. Shall.
I mean, the commission can technically take that out if they would like, but where DEP explicitly reference that, typically we accommodate DEP's comments if they haven't been provided yet, just like we talked about in the last meeting, into the conditions. So if the commission feels a way to amend this, that it's not necessarily a demand, but rather just another reminder. I do know that later on in the document, it does state, as every application does, that it doesn't waive requirements or remove an applicant's responsibility to be obtaining other necessary permits. So that is where that lies. I mean, you can take
Okay.
out.
I mean, I'm fine with it being in there. As you said, when DEP or DPW references it, I think it's good for us to put it into our findings. I think it does make sense.
Instead of shall, should it be should?
Should,
Does
yeah.
that allow? I mean, it's up to the commission, but I would agree, you have the ability to still request it or send a
Yeah.
reminder, but it's not explicitly within our
It's not
bylaw
required.
regs. So that's why I think you remove the shall component.
Okay. Does that make sense to other commission members? And are you comfortable with that one as written? Which was that was C. Okay. No changes. D. Anybody have any comments, questions, or changes for D? Moving on to E. Questions, comments, changes for E? F. Any questions, comments, or changes for F? none. G, questions, comments, or changes for G?
Brian,
Yes.
one component of E. So that I just want to bring to the attention of the commission, which if the commission's comfortable leaving the language in, that is fine. But again, I don't know that it should say to fund, or rather just shall be responsible for the cleaning and maintenance of these structures.
I think you're correct. It's probably good to get rid of to fund.
Okay.
Because if they can do it themselves, they can do it themselves. You know, if they have whatever the proper
Yeah,
equipment is, that's fine as well.
Yeah, and the commission only has the ability to enforce whether or not it's been maintained properly, which then may impact to the resource areas if it's not maintained properly, just like any other driveway.
Yep.
So I just caught that when I was reading. Sorry, I didn't mean to back you up.
No, I was going to say, and I said to commission members too, Rebecca, you're the same. If we need to back up, we're moving fast with these, so it's perfectly fine. So I believe we're on G.
For
If
F,
anybody
Brian, I'm sorry
Go
to go
ahead.
back. For F, do we want to include anything about maintaining those systems? Because if those systems fail in any way or aren't maintained for F, the infiltration system and roof drywall system, is that appropriate? Just to say that, you know, maintaining and keeping in working order, because if those fail, you know, then we have issues as well with our stormwater runoff and impacts to the resource areas. Is that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think we could probably just do it right after installed shall be installed and maintained to capture runoff and infiltrate on the site away from resources. Or, well, yeah. Right. Okay. All right. So G or any other changes to F? All right. G, any changes, comments, or questions regarding G? All right. H, and this is another one, what we'll have to decide on the wording, where the commission finds that the restoration planting within the adjacent upland resource areas either will or will not mitigate overland flow of stormwater by slowing down the runoff and allowing runoff to be absorbed into the ground more gradually. I think that generally speaking, any plantings will help in this. So it almost seems as it was proposed that it will mitigate some of the overland flow of stormwater by slowing it down and by allowing it to be absorbed. Other commission members have thoughts on this or comments, questions, think it should be something different?
I agree.
All right. Rebecca, then I think we keep it as you have, is what they will mitigate.
And it does say, Brian, it says it will mitigate. Oh, you got rid of the word some, huh?
I can put that in. I just added that in because I was quoting Brian, but
Or it could be
Yeah,
will
yeah.
partially mitigate.
Oh, I like that even better.
Will help to mitigate. Because just the word will just sounds so definite that it will do it.
Right. That either partially or will help to, either one, I think. Fine. We're down below, yeah. Okay.
So do you want to say partially will or will partially?
Will partially.
There you go, because it's already typed. All right. Are people comfortable with H? All right. In which case we should move on to 13. I can't see how it's going to improve passive recreation. I mean, right now it's private property. I guess the owners have some land they can hike over and walk through. It's not going to be open to the public, I'm assuming. So are we just looking at possible passive recreation of the homeowners?
So again, this is just an interest in the bylaw.
Yep.
It's talking about contributing to the following critical wetland resource interests. And passive recreation is one of those. The way it's stated in the regulations is that it includes ensuring the following areas are properly utilized, preserved, and maintained to protect resource interests listed in section above. So if you can also say it's not applicable, where you look at it to see if passive recreation areas adjoining resource areas are deemed important to the community, where this is fairly isolated, as you've stated, from publicly accessible passive recreation areas, or you could look at it as a resident there utilizes or doesn't utilize their, that's at the commission's discretion to interpret. But the commission also has the ability to just remove that section if it's not applicable.
I mean, seeing how we have it as seeing how it's listed in the bylaws, you might as well, I shouldn't say might as well, but I would see that we should keep it in. And I would think it would be that we'd go with will not, that the project will not improve passive recreation in this area. Other commission members have thoughts, feelings on this one, strong one way or the other, or comments, questions?
I agree. I don't see how it will improve passive recreation.
And you're fine keeping it in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So if we reference it in the bylaws, it makes sense to me that we should reference it in the findings.
Yeah, and I think it's just a statement. I don't think it's a negative statement by any way. It's just saying that it's not going to, we're not providing any kind of passive recreation through this development. So there's not, there's not a section of conservation land with trails. This isn't, where we see some larger developments and there's land set aside for conservation and there are trails developed. This is just, this project does not have that. And I don't think it's like I said, I don't think it's a negative statement one way or the other. I think it's just a statement. So.
Sure. I tend to agree.
Do you want me to elaborate like this or just no, just how we had it before?
I think elaborating is good. Yeah.
Because I think that clarifies your point that it's not necessarily a negative or a positive. It's just when we go through the interests, that's how it's addressed.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Rebecca.
Yes.
Once we get to section 14, do we need to want to go through the rest of the sections? Or is it possible to vote after? Well, maintenance. We should probably move on to section 14 going through. I was just trying to see if at some point we're at the end of our findings and getting more into this, some of the general guidelines.
Sorry, I was just looking through this.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
almost seems like the general guidelines and for the other sections, it would seem like we would need to approve or deny, and if we approved, we would start going through the other sections, and if we denied, we wouldn't necessarily need to. Am I reading through this correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, you are reading through that correctly.
okay.
Which we can go through it if you want, or if the commission wants to stop there, take a vote, and then see if what the decision is. But if I actually think we should go through the general findings, because then if the commission takes a vote, then you're still going to have to go through the conditions potentially,
Right, right.
but it's up to you, Mr. Chair.
I
Whichever you are
was I was curious to see if we took about which way the commission was going, because again, if for some reason it's a vote to deny, then we necessarily wouldn't need to do all of these other sections. And I just worry about getting caught up in some of these other sections with that, saying, well, if we approve this, if we don't approve that, I mean,
Sure. I
it
understand
seems
that.
like it diverges here.
Yep.
Curious what other commission members have to think. Would you prefer we went through all of the sections to get the wording down? Knowing that depending on how we vote, we may or may not need some of those other sections? Or would you prefer to vote now, see which way we decide to go, and then see what other sections we need to get through? Does that make sense? All right, would people be comfortable with that? All right. Hearing no objections. Yes, Rebecca, it would basically be a motion to either accept or deny the notice of intent as drafted and submitted. Correct? I'm sorry, it was.
Yes, under, sorry, when I just said, I didn't realize I was unmuted. You are correct to say that, but you need to reference both or either or, and that's why I would suggest separating it into two votes, so it's very clear what each vote is. If it's approval for both, awesome. And then with drafted order of conditions as discussed this evening, and then we'll go through that. Or if it's another decision, then if it's a denial, then it's a denial based on the findings this evening. But you need to reference the Bolton Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 233, similar to what you used for the introduction of the meeting here. And then the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and associated regulations.
Okay. In that case, a second. I'd like to make a motion that we deny the notice of intent for Century Mill Road, map 3.D, parcel 75, under the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and associated regulations. Do I hear a second for denying under the Wetlands Protection Act?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. And now I'd like to make a motion that we deny the notice of intent for Century Mill Road, map 3.D, parcel 75, under the Bolton bylaw, chapter 233 and associated regulations. Do I hear a second for that?
Aye.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an I as well.
Who had the second on the second motion?
It was Bill.
Bill.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So with that, Brian, does that conclude this item, or did you want to go over anything else associated with this agenda item?
I think it concludes this.
Okay.
And should say as a reminder, Rebecca, if you could type this up, I know we need to get it signed relatively fast. I know we're up against a deadline to actually submit all our findings.
Yep.
Could you remind us of when that deadline is?
Yep. So the deadline is the 22nd because the applicant was kind enough to give us an additional or an extension to deliberate this evening to vote. And then we would still have the same time period that follows, which would bring us to the 22nd. However, I will say, so this document is now drafted. I will, like I said, add in that one number that's coming directly from the plans, not new information, just plugging that in from the applicant's most recent plans that they had submitted prior to the public hearing closing. And then, where's my plan? So that will be in the Dropbox. Once it's in the Dropbox where the commission can access it for wet signatures, I will email you all. Please do so over the next couple days. It will be there over the weekend as well. And again, the mailing date, which will be the issuance date, has to be the 22nd. If we can send it out before that point, excellent, and I would prefer that. So I cannot stress enough that we do need your assistance with that.
Thank you.
I just had a ladybug fall on my head, so. All right. I accidentally closed out of the meeting here.
You're fine. I mean, that was the end of our public hearings for this year. Well, it wasn't even a public hearing. That was the end of some of our official business. We have still the discussion of Bowers Spring listed.
Yes. So with that, I'm just going to be, this will be a continual item on the agenda going forward until that work is completed and contracted. I know at the last meeting, the commission had authorized me to start working on getting quotes and getting some estimates. But at this time, I just want to remain open with, we are reaching out to reaching out for tree removal quotes, and we're reaching out for materials and then installation of material. And then of course, the restoration associated with that work. And again, this was all incorporated into and the higher recommendations that were assessed by GZA as part of the urban dam assessment. So again, if the commission has questions along the way, I'd be happy to address them. I'm still waiting. I did reach out to, like I said, those parties, but I have yet to hear back. So when I do, that will be something that needs to be assessed, and we'll determine whether or not it needs to go out to bid, or if we can just request multiple quotes from various companies as we do for best business practices anyway. Typically, I solicit 3 or more. If it comes in under that requirement, if it's over, we are required to follow a specific process, which I'll work with the town administrator to ensure that we are in compliance with. And then we did minutes. The guided trail walk, I think I mentioned already. If not, it's March 22nd, World Water Day. It starts at 12 p.m. from Ledgewood Circle Trailhead, and we'll be going from Ledgewood Circle in Bolton through the town-owned open space and over crossing one roadway in Harvard to the Powell Reed Conservation or Powell Reed property, which has a conservation restriction over it, and looping back. Then we have our Nashua River Resilient Lands Management Project that is ongoing. Again, this was a 2-year project, so we will shortly be entering into our 2nd year. As a heads up to that as well, there will be a draft regulation and bylaw document. So what they've done is they've assessed various components of bylaws and regulations throughout Massachusetts that incorporate climate resilient aspects. And at the end, they will provide some information to the various boards and departments within Bolton and our partner town of Clinton for catered and very specific regulations and bylaw. But at this time, it's just showing what they have, the format that they have. So when they will give a presentation on that, so I would encourage the commission, I'll share that information when it becomes solidified, and you will also be receiving that more finalized but still draft document. And I would appreciate your review of that, and that will be on an upcoming agenda as well, just to ensure that the commission is able to provide some feedback on that document. And then as they finalize into the coming fiscal year, they will tailor it directly to Bolton as well. And then our volunteer land steward position is still open. We are breaking into spring here, or seemingly so. So there is even more work to do. And if anyone is interested, please feel free to share that information.
Excellent. Thank you. Any new business from conservation members, or any other topic they would like to bring up? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion that we hereby adjourn our Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Emily,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jillian,
Aye.
Lori Stevenson,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
No, thank you all very much, and thank you, Rebecca.
Yep.
Good night. Don't forget to sign the paperwork this week. Right there.
You will be getting a flurry of emails from me until you do, so be prepared.
Definitely. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Recording stopped.